morning and welcome back. So we mounted our drive, we imported our libraries and read our CSV file, and now we are going to clean our data set. You're probably going to spend at least 70 to 80% of your time on this step alone. It's a really tedious process, but it's necessary because if your data isn't valid, if there's anything missing, or if there are any numbers that are inaccurate, then any analysis that you run based on those wrong numbers, by default, your analysis will be wrong. It's always important to validate your data before you start running your analysis. There is no one size fits all data cleaning method. You really have to take it on a case-by-case basis. With that being said, it is usually a lot easier to clean your data set if you know what your end goal for your analysis is. So I pulled these questions from the same place that I pulled the data set from Kaggle. The link will be dropped in the description below. There are a lot of questions that can be answered with this data set, but for the time being, we're just going to keep it to these 5. So I'm going to call our data frame using the variable that we created in the last video. And I'm also going to use the .head function. This will return just the first 5 rows of the data set. If I were to call the data frame with just the variable, it's just a lot. Like, you get the first 5 and the last 5, and that's just a lot of space being taken up. One place that I usually like to start is just checking the data frame for null values. Is null. If I just run this function, this is a lot visually to take in. So I'm going to take a sum of all of the null values. Wow, 207 null values in the date of termination column. That doesn't sound too crazy because this is a data set about employees with a company. So if there are null values in a column called date of termination, it would make sense that the employees that are still active with that company don't have a value in that column. We'll double check that column just to make sure. Let's go look at that column actually, just to confirm. If the employee is still active with the company, then it would make sense that there is no value in this column. I'm going to create 2 new data frames, one for the active employees and one for the employees that have been terminated, and I'm going to store them in 2 new variables so that we can reference them later. I don't want to dismiss any insights that we could pull from the employees who are no longer with the company. We're going to filter our data frame so that we have one that only includes employees that are active, and we have another that only includes employees that have been terminated. We're going to use the termed column for reference because this column is binary, meaning this column will show a 0 if the employee is still active with the company, meaning that they don't have a value in the date of termination column, and it'll show a 1 if the employee has been terminated. So I'm going to run this. Nothing happened because all I did was tell Python to store this line of code into a new variable. So I'm going to come down here and do the same thing, and I'm going to name this data frame term, and that's just going to be short for terminated. We're going to store those so that we can reference them later, because like I said, I just don't want to ignore the fact that a third of our data set has been terminated.